Right guys, so I managed to remember what I did now. So of course I don't need to take this snap ring off. I've actually remembered or recalled that I didn't take this apart. When it came to redoing it, I didn't actually bother taking this apart. So this whole nose gear assembly with the bearing and everything was never removed. So, not removed, but disassembled from this component that it'll all come out in. So that's something I've just remembered. But let's get it out, and the best way of doing this then, so the bearing is really tight in the case, so what I've done is if I get the drift in here again, so again these drifts are really great, I can just tap it down the centre. So I'm going to be replacing the nose gear, if I can get some purchase on it. You're not helping, blocking ring, at all, thanks for that. So see, let's just finish this off then. There we go. Careful tapping there with the brass drift helped save the day. So that is the front assembly there, all as one piece. Now there was a load of movement I had, wobble in this bearing, so we're gonna see what's going on there and replace this bearing. You can see where the brass drift tapped on the inside there. It doesn't damage it because it's steel, but you can dent it. It's an old SKF bearing with a bit of corrosion there, bit of noise. So that's going to be replaced, and this nose gear is going to be replaced as well. There is some, you can see the brass where the drift's been near the teeth there, but they're pretty well worn, these teeth, and there was some damage. There's some pitting, there's a score, but this is going to be replaced. So there we go, that's inside, that's where the needle rollers go, and this is where the output shaft runs inside it. And then here's the ring, one of the rings. This one was the third gear ring, which was working okay. It's pretty worn down there, pretty worn, and it goes on like that. And as you engage, as you push the fork across, it pushes this ring up against this cone here, and it slowly, the pressure, the friction increases, and they're rotating like this, and then you push until you push really hard, and then they lock together like that, and then this ring, this locking ring can come across and then locks the gears in like that and locks it to the shaft there. So that's how they lock together. So that's what that's doing, and this is what the issue I was having with this was the issue I was having with going back to second and third, is it didn't have the ring, this ring here was not creating enough friction on the cone there to lock them to get together. I can push hard and they're really locked, it's amazing actually. So, and then it wasn't, so I was getting gear clashing, so but it doesn't look terribly worn, and then look, there it goes in like that. So that's how it works. I mean, it doesn't look terrible, it's amazing. This is the original this is the original 1945 ring here, so it's done very well, this gear, this third gear. It's synchro mesh, so this gear is constantly in mesh with a cluster gear, but this is the bit which gets worn along with this blocking ring here. So yeah, but you know, it's not all completely rubbed down. There's not even any really high spots on it. Some bright spots there. Quite incredible actually. So it's done really well, it's amazing. But I have a complete synchro, Willys of France synchro set to replace that. Now once that's done, you should be able to just slide this out. See, I'm having to remember all this, it's not easy. Can I do this easily or not? Do I have to remove first gear first, or can you wangle it out? Aha, there's a means and ways. You can just rip everything apart. So let's move this out of the way, let's have a look at the blocking ring, synchro ring here. So yeah, this is the one which was causing issues then. So I've got to actually remove it, haven't I, with the retainer. There's a snap ring there. There we go, so that's that snap ring off. Not totally destroyed, poor old thing. Sorry, snap ring. So that's another G marked. So the output shaft on this is also the original World War II Ford. That's it. It's just not happy. Come on, you. probably all to do with it being not set up correctly and wearing a bit weirdly. So let's have a look. Yeah, so this was pretty tight for some reason. Look at that shaft. There's a slither of metal there. Look, there's just this finest slither. Probably off at one of these edges. Okay. Well, there we go. I've got a new output Willys of France output shaft. But there we can see how this synchro ring or dog has worn weirdly here. So it hasn't been happy. It's because of too much slop. It's been rocking around and it's worn there, so that's no good. But so if we take that off. So unlike the previous one, if I push hard on this one, so on the other one, if you remember, this has got a bit more oil on it. If you remember on the other one, if I pushed hard, it would really lock up. But look at this. So this synchro ring is just too worn. That is why my second was slipping. What I'm amazed about is that this isn't all wrecked, isn't all worn to pieces. Okay, we've got the wear here, but you can see down here, yeah, that's practically smooth now. Those rings are practically smooth. And there's more chattering, and look, it's worn eccentrically, so that's not good at all. So this is the issue. So there's no getting around that. You can baby the gearbox to double the clutch to get it go from second to third and do very slow up changes in from first to second like I did, and it won't totally wreck it, but it could also wreck it in one poor use. You know, if you took it out or gave your Jeep to somebody else and they didn't know how to change gear properly, or the way that you were changing gear to get it not to grind, they could wreck this straight away. So this shows, yeah, this gearbox needed rebuilding and doing properly. It's not very interested at coming off. These bits have been a bit, yeah, it's a bit tight. Ah, what's going on here? That is the bushing. Bushing is separated. I don't think the bushing should generally separate. It's been okay. Oh, God. Again, is this another problem from reproduction part, or is this due to this poor setup? But it's probably a combination again, but this bushing has come out, and instead of the bushing rotating on the shaft when it's inside the second gear, it's been rotating inside here. The gear has been rotating around the bushing. Look at that. So it's had steel to steel. So there we go, here's our output shaft, all separated now. There we go, and there is the reproduction first gear, and that is reverse face, and there's no wear on that at all, is there? I'm very careful putting it in gear, reverse gear. You know, like I said, I just stop it completely before I do anything with it. There's no wear on that whatsoever. And then on this face, which is actually first gear, which you change into more often, don't you? And you change down from when the Jeep's moving. Again, little wear, and there's one slight damage somewhere there, or maybe there's a couple, but this is what happens. I'll have to think about that. I'll have to see how this mates up with the new shaft and see if it's a good fit or not. There's a bit of chatter and play in there, so we're going to have to look at that. But that's the output shaft completed then, separated. There's the ring there to hold it all together. But this one's for the replacement. I believe it's out of tolerance, it's out of limits. We've also had well, this had, actually no, it's not. The steel to steel rotation was in here, so that's all right. But yeah, there we go. That's it. World War II. Possibly good. Not going to bother. Synchro bit's not going to bother. All going to be replaced. So really, we'll have to look at these components here. And then, let's go in, let's delve in deeper then. So, slowly filling up with bits everywhere. Now, there goes first gear. Let's have a look what we're left with. So we've got the idler, the reverse idler. This was the original gear. This shaft was replaced, I believe. So this is a replacement shaft. You can see discoloration where it's been running, but I can't feel anything, so that's probably good. Can't feel anything there. Then up you come. Let's get cluster gear out then. So this will be interesting. How did the cluster gear wear? So let's have a look first. Let's have a look at our washers. So here's a washer. There's some metal in it, not much, so we're going to replace that. There's some steel spooling. Not terrible. Here's... No, this one runs just on the back here. So obviously it's got some steel from somewhere and it's been rubbing it in there, but yeah, that looks okay. That's not bad. That's a bit of contamination. What can we see? The teeth, the needles are falling down. Is that steel washer? It's got some rust on it. Is that the side which goes on the case? Doesn't look terrible, does it? There's a touch of damage there for some reason. Strange about the rust. I suppose that's the side which touches the case. It's got a bit of moisture in it, perhaps, and this is the side which runs on here. They don't look terrible. There's not a huge amount. There's no large amounts of metal or anything like that. You can see one or two pieces. Let's have a look. There's nothing exciting in there. Nothing there. That's not terrible. Nothing too interesting there. So this idler, this was someone else had put in. This is a T84 made in the USA. So this is a replacement someone's done at some point. And it wasn't terrible, so I kept it. But you can see whoever's been putting it into reverse has smacked it in more than I have on the cluster gear, because there's more damage on this, or it could just be normal wear over the years. But it's not terrible. But again, as I'm replacing everything, I might replace this as well. We'll have to think about it, have to think about the cost. But yeah, there we go. So that is the T84 disassembled really. We've got to get this all apart, which will be fun, and then we can start looking at tolerances and decide exactly what we're going to replace and what have you. But yeah, I think we pretty much discussed what we found as we've gone along and what needs doing really. So and we found the possible reasons for the problems I've been having. So you know, as I said, it's mostly my fault really, but that's just what happens sometimes, isn't it? You live and learn. You have to learn how to do these things, and you're also limited by money and time sometimes. So I did what I did at the time and it worked pretty well, and I think you could say pretty much by the looks of it I've got away with it pretty well, in all fairness. But it's not correct, it's not perfect, is it? And that's not what we want. We want a transmission which works properly and doesn't have these issues, especially as the issues on second gear, especially with the rotating bushing for some reason, which is strange. I'm not entirely sure how. The issues with selecting second gear could also cause this bushing to rotate within the steel. That's very strange. So I'm not entirely sure about that, whether that was an issue due to me or due to the reproduction part or not. But yeah, there was certainly some issues in there. So I reckon we could have got, looking at it, I reckon we could have got a good amount of distance more out of it. But there are obviously issues which were brewing and would start to become worse. This steel-to-steel rotation would definitely become worse. This synchro ring is not happy. That's dead, that synchro ring on the inside. But the other repro parts, the first gear seems to have done pretty well. We haven't mashed that in 1,000 miles. We haven't mashed that to pieces, so that's pretty good. For reverse, you can't even tell it's been used practically. So it's done pretty well really. And the washers, the thrust washers, look pretty good. They haven't picked up any. There's only one bit of metal, which that one's caught. Just one tiny bit of metal, and that's it. So yeah, it's done pretty well. That's not a bad cluster gear at all. That's, of course, that's, you know, it's perfectly usable. Again, I have to think about that, whether I want to use my new Willys of France new old stock or keep this repro one, but that's in healthy condition there. So yeah, guys, pretty interesting really what we've got out of that. So we'll come on to measuring, clean things up, measure them, and we'll start deciding what we're going to replace and what we're going to keep.